The signal came on a cold Tuesday morning. It was weak at first, just a small blip on the screens at the Deep Space Monitoring Station in Australia. The technicians thought it was a glitch. They ran their tests and checked their equipment. But the signal did not stop. It grew stronger. Within hours, every space agency on Earth was listening. The signal was not random noise. It was a pattern, a repeating message, and when the linguists and mathematicians finally broke the code, the world held its breath. It was a cry for help. The message was simple. A ship was damaged. The crew was dying. They needed rescue. They were peaceful. They meant no harm. Please help us. Please. Captain Park Do-won stood on the bridge of the rescue cruiser Horizon's Edge and watched the stars through the main window. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and lines on his face that spoke of many years in space. He had commanded ships for 20 years. He had seen accidents and disasters. He had lost friends to the cold emptiness between worlds. But he had never seen anything like this. An alien ship. Real aliens. After all the centuries of wondering, of searching, of hoping, humanity was finally not alone. "Captain," said Lieutenant Kim Yuna from her station. She was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes and quick hands on her console. "I have established stable communication with the alien vessel. They are responding to our hails." Do-won nodded slowly. "Put it on the main screen." The screen flickered. Then a face appeared. But it was not a human face. The creature had skin that glowed with soft colors, shifting from blue to purple to green like the northern lights on Earth. Its eyes were large and dark, without pupils. It had no nose that Do-won could see, only a small mouth that moved in strange ways when it spoke. The translation software worked quickly. The alien's voice became words that the crew could understand. "Thank you for answering our call," the creature said. "I am called Valen Prime. I speak for my people. We are the last survivors of the Valen Collective. Our homeworld was destroyed by a great disaster. Our ship was damaged in our escape. We have been drifting for many cycles, hoping someone would hear us. Please. We mean you no harm. We only wish to live." Do-won felt something twist in his chest. Compassion. Pity. Here was a species that had lost everything. Their home. Their people. Their hope. How could humanity turn them away? But not everyone on the bridge shared his feelings. Commander Cho Tae-ho stood at the tactical station with his arms crossed. He was a serious man who trusted numbers more than feelings. His job was to think about threats, and right now, his mind was full of questions. "Captain," Tae-ho said quietly, stepping closer. "We know nothing about these creatures. Their ship could be carrying weapons. This could be a trap." "A trap?" Do-won raised an eyebrow. "They are asking for rescue." "Commander, their ship is clearly damaged. Look at the scans." "The scans show damage, yes," Tae-ho admitted. "But we cannot know if that damage is real or staged. I recommend caution." Yuna turned from her station. "Sir, they are transmitting medical data. Their crew is suffering. Some of them are dying. The readings match biological distress signals." Do-won looked at Tae-ho, then at Yuna, then back at the alien face on the screen. Valen Prime waited in patient silence, its skin flickering with soft, sad colors. "We will help them," Do-won decided. "Prepare the docking bay. Medical teams on standby. But Tae-ho, keep security alert. If anything seems wrong, we pull back immediately." Tae-ho nodded, though his face showed he was not happy. "Understood, Captain." The docking took 3 hours. The alien ship was strange and beautiful, covered in patterns that looked almost organic, like the shell of a sea creature. It attached to the Horizon's Edge with a soft hiss, and the airlocks connected. The Velen came aboard slowly. There were 47 of them. They were tall and thin, with long limbs that moved in graceful ways. Their glowing skin made the hallways look like they were filled with living light. Many of them were weak. Some had to be carried on stretchers. The medical teams rushed to help them. Do-won watched from the observation deck as the refugees filed past. Most of them did not look up. They seemed exhausted, broken, grateful just to be alive. One of them, a smaller villain with skin that glowed pale yellow, stopped and looked directly at the captain. It placed one long hand over its chest in what seemed like a gesture of thanks. Do-won nodded in return. In the lower decks, Ensign Han Mireille was not watching the refugees. She was studying their ship. Mireille was 25 years old, the youngest engineer on the horizon's edge. She had a habit that annoyed her superiors. She noticed things. Small things. Things that did not fit. And right now, something about the Velan ship did not fit. She floated through the damaged vessel with her scanner, recording everything. The ship's reactor was indeed broken. The hull had cracks and burns. But Mireille had studied ship damage for years. She knew what accidents looked like. And this did not look like an accident. The damage was too clean, too precise. The cracks in the hull were all in places that would look dramatic, but would not actually destroy the ship. The reactor failure had knocked out power, but had not caused any radiation leaks. It was as if someone had carefully broken the ship just enough to look helpless, but not enough to actually be helpless. Mireille frowned at her scanner. She told herself she was being paranoid. These were refugees, survivors. They had lost their home. Why would they fake damage to their own ship? But the question would not leave her mind. That night, as the horizon's edge turned back toward Earth, Mireille lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling. The Velen were in the medical bay, being treated by the doctors. The captain had reported the successful rescue to Earth Command. The whole crew was excited, talking about first contact, about history being made. Mireille should have been excited too. But she could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The damage did not make sense. The way the Velan had waited so patiently, as if they knew someone would come. The way Velan Prime had spoken, so calm and practiced, like someone reading a script. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. But her dreams were full of glowing skin and dark eyes, and a voice that whispered words she could not understand. The Velen had come to Earth asking for help, and humanity, kind and hopeful and trusting, had answered. They did not know that the trap had already closed around them. 6 months had passed since the Velen came to Earth, and the world had changed in ways no one expected. The aliens were everywhere now, not physically, for there were still only 47 of them, but their presence was felt in every corner of human society. They appeared on news programs, smiling their strange smiles. They met with world leaders, exchanging gifts and knowledge. They were the most famous beings on the planet, and humanity loved them. The Velan had been generous. In the first month, they shared medical technology that could cure diseases humans had suffered from for centuries. Cancer treatments that worked in days instead of years, medicines that healed wounds overnight. The hospitals filled with grateful patients who called the Velan angels. In the second month, they gave humanity clean energy. A new type of reactor that produced power from water and sunlight, with no pollution, no waste. Within weeks, power plants around the world began converting to the new system. The air in cities started to clear. People wept with joy. In the third month, they revealed star maps, charts of the galaxy showing thousands of worlds, many of them habitable. Humanity's dream of reaching the stars was no longer a dream. It was a plan. Captain Park Do-won, now promoted to admiral, watched all of this from his office in Seoul. The walls were covered with medals and commendations. The desk was covered with reports. He should have been happy. He had brought the Velan to Earth. He was a hero. History would remember his name, but late at night, when the office was dark and quiet, Do-won could not sleep. Something bothered him. Something he could not name. The Velen were too perfect. Too generous. Too helpful. In all of human history, nothing had ever come for free. There was always a price. Always a catch. But the Velen asked for nothing. They only gave. It did not make sense. On the other side of the city, in a small research lab, Baek Jisoo was finding answers that no one wanted to hear. Jisoo was a xenobiologist, one of the scientists assigned to study the Velen. She was a quiet woman, with steady hands and a sharp mind. Her job was to understand how the aliens worked, how their bodies functioned, what made them different from humans. What she found made her afraid. The Velan had told humanity that they were fragile, weak, survivors of a disaster who needed help to stay alive. But Jisoo's tests told a different story. The Velan were not weak, they were incredibly strong. Their bodies could survive extreme temperatures, both hot and cold. Their skin could heal from wounds in minutes, and most disturbing of all, her tests showed that they could survive in the vacuum of space for hours without protection. These were not helpless refugees. These were powerful creatures pretending to be helpless. Jisoo shared her findings with one person, Ensign Han Mirai. The two women met in secret, in Mirai's small apartment near the spaceport. Mirai had been transferred to Earth after the rescue mission. Assigned to help study the Velen's damaged ship, she had spent months examining every piece of that vessel, and her suspicions had only grown stronger. The damage was faked, Mirai said, spreading her notes across the table. I am certain now. The patterns do not match any kind of accident. Someone broke that ship on purpose, in exactly the right ways to make it look helpless. Jisoo nodded slowly. And my research confirms it. These creatures do not need rescue. They could survive almost anything. So why pretend to be weak? The question hung in the air between them. Neither woman had an answer they wanted to believe. Far above Earth, in orbit around the moon, Commander Cho Tae-ho was finding his own disturbing evidence. Tae-ho now commanded the patrol ship Iron Wake. His job was to watch Earth's space, to guard against threats from beyond. He took his job seriously, perhaps too seriously. While others celebrated the Velen alliance, Tae-ho watched and listened. His sensors had detected something strange. Encrypted signals, coming from the Velen quarters on Earth and traveling outward into deep space. The signals were short and quick, easy to miss if you were not looking, but Tae-ho was always looking. He had captured several of these signals and sent them to the cryptography division for analysis. Most of the code was still unbroken. But one phrase had been translated. It appeared in every message, repeated like a prayer or a countdown. The harvest is ready. Tae-ho did not know what harvest meant to the Velan. But he knew it could not be good. He tried to report his findings to Admiral Do-won. But the Admiral was busy with meetings, with politicians, with the endless work of preparing humanity for its future among the stars. Tae-ho's warnings were noted and filed away. No one wanted to hear that their new friends might be enemies. Back on Earth, Lieutenant Kim Yuna had become the official liaison between humanity and the Velan. She spent every day with them, learning their language, their customs, their ways of thinking. She had come to care for them, to see them as friends, but even she had noticed things that troubled her. The Velan asked many questions. They wanted to know about Earth's defenses, about the location of military bases, about population centers and communication networks. They said they were curious, that they wanted to understand humanity better. Yuna had answered their questions honestly, seeing no reason to hide anything from allies. Now, lying awake at night, she wondered if she had made a mistake. In her most recent meeting with Velen Prime, something had happened that she could not explain. She had been showing the alien a map of Earth's cities when she saw its skin flash with a color she had never seen before. A dark red, almost black, that appeared for just a moment before vanishing. What was that? She had asked. Velen Prime had tilted its head, its expression unreadable. Nothing. A momentary feeling. Your world is very beautiful, Lieutenant. So full of life. The way it said life made Yuna's skin crawl. Admiral Do-won, Jisoo, Mirai, Tae-ho, and Yuna. 5 humans with 5 different pieces of a terrible puzzle. But they had not yet put the pieces together. They had not yet understood what they were facing. The Velan continued to smile, continued to give gifts, continued to be the perfect friends, and deep in space, hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Mars, 300 Velen warships waited in silence. They had been there for months, powered down, invisible to human sensors. Their crews slept in cold storage, dreaming of the hunt to come. The scouting party had done its work well. Earth's defenses were mapped. Its weaknesses were known. The gifts of technology had been accepted, and with those gifts came hidden programs, secret codes that would cripple human systems when the time was right. The harvest was indeed ready. In his office in Seoul, Admiral Do-won stood at the window and watched the sun set over the city. Millions of people lived below him, going about their lives, trusting that their leaders would keep them safe, trusting that the aliens who had come asking for help were truly friends. Do-won had dedicated his life to protecting those people. And now, for the first time in his career, he felt truly afraid. Not of an enemy he could see and fight, but of a suspicion he could not prove. He picked up his communicator and called Taeho's ship. "Commander," he said quietly. "We need to talk." But even as he spoke, even as the first seeds of resistance began to form, the Valon were already moving. Their plan was entering its final phase. The trap was about to close, and humanity was not ready. Admiral Park Do-won was in his office when the first explosion shook the building. He grabbed the edge of his desk as the floor tilted beneath him. Alarms screamed. Red lights flashed. Through his window, he saw a sight that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Seoul was burning. Ships filled the sky. Not human ships. Valon ships. Hundreds of them, descending through the clouds like a swarm of glowing insects. They fired beams of light that cut through buildings like knives through paper. Entire blocks collapsed in seconds. People ran through the streets, screaming, dying. Do-won's communicator screamed with voices. Reports from every continent. Tokyo was under attack. New York, London, Moscow, Beijing, Cairo. Every major city on Earth hit at the same moment. The Valon had struck everywhere at once, and humanity's defenses were useless. The gifts, the wonderful technology that the Valon had shared so freely, it was all turning against them now. Power plants shut down without warning. Communication networks went dark. The defense systems that protected Earth's cities simply stopped working, their controls locked out by hidden programs that had been sleeping in the code for months. It was not an invasion. It was an execution. Do-won ran from his office, pushing through crowds of panicked staff. He had to reach the command center. He had to do something. But even as he ran, he knew it was already too late. The Valon on Earth had revealed their true nature. The 47 refugees, the gentle survivors who had asked for nothing but kindness, had transformed into something terrible. Their skin no longer glowed with soft colors. It burned with deep red and black, the colors of predators ready to feed. They moved through the chaos with terrible speed, their long limbs cutting down anyone who came near. They were not refugees. They were hunters, and humanity was their prey. In a bunker beneath the burning city, Lieutenant Kim Yuna crouched in the darkness and wept. She had trusted them. She had believed every word they said. She had answered their questions, shown them Earth's secrets, called them friends, and now millions of people were dying because of her stupidity. But Yuna was a soldier, and soldiers do not have time for tears. She wiped her eyes and checked her weapon. The bunker's communication equipment was damaged but not destroyed. With shaking hands, she managed to connect to what remained of Earth's emergency broadcast system. "This is Lieutenant Kim Yuna of United Earth Space Command," she said into the microphone. Her voice was rough but steady. "All stations, all frequencies. The Valon have attacked. This is not a misunderstanding. They are hostile. I repeat, they are hostile. Do not trust any Valon technology. Do not accept any communications from Valon ships. They lied to us. They used our compassion against us." She paused, fighting to control her voice. "But we are not finished. We are humanity. We have survived worse than this. Find weapons. Find shelter. Find each other. Fight back. We will not go quietly into the darkness." She ended the transmission and sat back, breathing hard. She did not know if anyone had heard. She did not know if it mattered. But she had to try. In orbit above Earth, Commander Cho Taeho was fighting a battle he could not win. The Iron Wake was one of 12 human ships that had survived the initial attack. 12 ships against hundreds. Taeho knew the numbers. He knew they were all going to die. But he was going to make the Velan pay for every human life they took. "Target the flagship," he ordered. "All weapons. Everything we have." His crew obeyed without question. The Iron Wake's cannons fired, sending streams of light toward the massive Velan command ship. The shots hit the ship's shields and bounced away harmlessly. The Velan technology was far beyond anything humanity possessed, but Taeho had not expected his weapons to work. "Navigation," he said calmly. "Set collision course. Maximum speed." The bridge went silent. Every member of his crew understood what he was asking. "Sir," his first officer said quietly, "if we do this, there is no coming back." Taeho looked at the main screen. The Velan flagship hung in space like a beast watching its prey. Behind it, Earth burned. "I know," he said. "But if we can cripple that ship, we give our people a chance. We give them time. That is worth dying for." No one argued. No one tried to stop him. They were soldiers, and they understood duty. The Iron Wake turned toward the flagship and accelerated. Velan fighters tried to stop them, but Taeho's crew was skilled. They dodged and weaved through enemy fire, taking damage but never slowing down. The flagship grew larger and larger on the screen. "It has been an honor," Taeho said to his crew. They did not answer. They did not need to. The Iron Wake struck the flagship's engine section at full speed. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief flash of light against the stars. The flagship shuddered, its engines failing, its movement stopping. It was not destroyed, but it was crippled, unable to direct the battle. Commander Cho Taeho and his crew were gone. On the ground, Ensign Han Mireille and Baek Jisoo were running for their lives. The research facility where they worked had been one of the first targets. Jisoo's lab was destroyed, her research scattered, but Mireille had grabbed one thing before they fled. A data chip containing all of her analysis of the Velan ship, everything she knew about their technology, their weaknesses, their lies. "We have to reach the spaceport," Mireille gasped as they ran through burning streets. "If we can get to the moon base, we might be able to use this information." "The spaceport is probably destroyed," Jisoo said. "Probably, but we have to try." They were stopped by a wall of fire. A building had collapsed, blocking their path. Mireille looked around desperately, searching for another way. Then she saw them, 3 Velan hunters, moving through the smoke with terrible grace. Their skin burned red-black. Their dark eyes found the 2 women and fixed on them like a predator spotting prey. Mireille raised her weapon, a small pistol that suddenly felt very useless. The Velan were fast, faster than humans. She would be lucky to fire once before they reached her, but she was going to try. The lead Velan lunged. Mireille fired. The shot hit the creature in the chest, and to her shock, it stumbled. Its skin flickered, changing color, showing pain. Her weapon was not powerful enough to kill it, but it was enough to hurt it. "Run!" Jisoo screamed. They ran. Behind them, the wounded Velan howled with rage. But its companions stopped to help it. And that gave the 2 women just enough time to disappear into the maze of burning buildings. Hours later, exhausted and covered in ash, they reached a hidden emergency shelter. Inside, they found other survivors, soldiers and civilians who had escaped the slaughter. Among them was Admiral Do-won, his uniform torn and bloody but his eyes still sharp. "Admiral," Mireille said, approaching him. "I have information. About the Velan. About their technology. I know how to hurt them." Do-won looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Tell me everything." Above the planet, the Velan fleet continued its attack. Cities fell. Billions died. The harvest had begun, and humanity was being cut down like grain before the scythe. But in shelters and bunkers across the world, survivors were gathering, soldiers were organizing, scientists were working, and a plan was beginning to form. The Velan had struck the first blow. They had hurt humanity badly, perhaps mortally. But they had not finished the job, and humanity was about to remind them why that was a terrible mistake. The Earth was a wounded world. Half of its great cities lay in ruins. Billions of people were dead. The survivors lived in bunkers underground, in mountain caves, in the wreckage of buildings that still stood. They ate whatever food they could find. They drank water that tasted like ash. They lived in fear, but they lived. The Velen had expected humanity to break. They had expected the survivors to scatter, to fight each other for scraps, to become animals waiting to be collected. That was what always happened. That was what every species did when the Velen came to harvest. But humans were different. In a deep bunker beneath what used to be the city of Busan, Admiral Park Do-won stood before a table covered with maps and reports. Around him gathered the commanders of what remained of Earth's military. They were tired, wounded, and angry. But they were not broken. The Velen have made a mistake, Do-won said. They thought our compassion made us weak. They thought that because we helped them, we could not fight. They were wrong. He pointed to the maps. In the past 3 months, we have gathered intelligence. We have studied their movements, their patterns, their weaknesses, and we have found something important. Han Mireille stepped forward. She looked different now. The young ensign who had nervously examined an alien ship was gone. In her place stood a hardened warrior with fire in her eyes. The Velen technology that they gave us, Mireille explained. It all contains hidden programs, backdoors that let them control our systems. But I have been studying these programs, and I have found a way to turn them around. She held up a small device. This is a virus. If we can upload it to the Velen fleet's main network, it will use their own backdoors against them. It will shut down their shields, their weapons, their communications. It will make them helpless. The commanders murmured with hope for the first time in months. But getting close enough to upload it will be almost impossible, Mireille admitted. We would need to get within range of their flagship, and their defenses are strong. Baek Jisoo spoke next. There is more. I have continued my research on Velen biology. Their bodies are incredibly tough, but they have a weakness. A specific frequency of electromagnetic radiation disrupts their neural systems. It causes them pain, confusion. At high enough levels, it can disable them completely. She displayed her findings on a screen. We can build pulse weapons that generate this frequency. They will not work at long range, but in close combat, they could give our soldiers an advantage. Admiral Do-won looked at his commanders. We have weapons that can hurt them. We have a virus that can cripple their fleet, but we still face hundreds of their ships with only a handful of our own. We need more than weapons. We need people. We have people, said a voice from the back of the room. Lieutenant Kim Yuna stepped forward. Her voice was rough from months of constant broadcasting, constant organizing, constant fighting. She had become the voice of the resistance, the one who kept the survivors connected, who reminded them they were not alone. I have been in contact with resistance groups on every continent, Yuna said. Soldiers who escaped the initial attack. Civilians who learned to fight. Scientists working in hidden labs. Farmers who are feeding the bunkers. Everyone who can hold a weapon or turn a wrench. They are ready. They are waiting for our signal. Do-won nodded slowly. Then we give them a signal. He turned to the main screen and activated the global broadcast system. It was weak, patched together from salvaged equipment, but it reached every shelter, every bunker, every group of survivors hiding in the ruins. People of Earth, Do-won began. This is Admiral Park Do-won. 3 months ago, we were attacked by creatures we thought were our friends. They killed billions of us. They burned our cities. They tried to harvest us like animals. His voice grew stronger. But we are not animals. We are humans. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We crawled up from the mud with nothing but our hands and our minds. And we built civilizations that touch the stars. We did not come this far to be food for monsters. Across the world, survivors gathered around speakers and screens, listening. Tomorrow, we fight back. Tomorrow, We show the Velen what it means to attack humanity. Some of us will die. Many of us will die. But we will die as humans, not as prey. And those who survive will build a new world. A stronger world. A world that will never be threatened like this again. He paused. To everyone who can fight, prepare yourselves. To everyone who cannot, pray for us. And to the Velen who may be listening, you should have killed all of us when you had the chance, because what is coming for you is worse than anything you can imagine. The broadcast ended. In shelters around the world, people began to move. Soldiers checked their weapons. Engineers powered up the few ships that humanity had hidden. Scientists prepared the electromagnetic pulse devices. Pilots climbed into cockpits. Everyone who could contribute did contribute. Yuna recorded one final message, her voice tired but unbroken. They thought our kindness was weakness. They thought our hope was foolishness. They will learn what it means to threaten a species that clawed its way up from the mud, survived ice ages and plagues and wars, and still chose to reach for the stars. Tomorrow, we teach them a lesson they will never forget. The night before the battle, Mireille sat alone in a small room, working on her virus. Her hands moved quickly, checking the code one last time. Everything had to be perfect. There would be no second chance. Jisoo found her there. "Are you ready?" Jisoo asked. Mireille shook her head. "No, but I will be." Jisoo sat down beside her. "I keep thinking about that day. When we found those Velen in the streets. When you shot one of them. You were so scared." "I was terrified," Mireille admitted. "But I was more angry than scared. They lied to us. They smiled at us and planned to kill us. That anger kept me moving. And now?" Mireille looked at her friend. "Now I am still angry. But I am also hopeful. We have a chance, Jisoo. A real chance. And I will not waste it." Jisoo smiled. "Neither will I." In his quarters, Admiral Dowan sat alone with his thoughts. He remembered Cho Taeho, the man who had warned him about the Velen from the beginning. He remembered the flash of light when the iron wake struck the flagship. He remembered all the people who had died because he had trusted the wrong creatures. He could not bring them back. But he could make sure their deaths meant something. Tomorrow, he would lead humanity into battle. Tomorrow, he would either win or die. Either way, the Velen would learn that some prey fights back. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. Not for victory. Just for the strength to do what needed to be done. Outside the bunkers, the night was dark and cold. The stars shone overhead, distant and uncaring. Among those stars, the Velen fleet waited, confident in their power, certain of their victory. They did not know what was coming. They did not know that humanity, wounded and desperate and furious, was about to remind the galaxy why Earth had produced the most dangerous species in existence. Dawn would bring war, and the Velen would learn to fear. From hidden bases around the planet, ships lifted into the sky. They were not many. 18 vessels against 300, but they were crewed by men and women who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Admiral Park Do-won stood on the bridge of the cruiser Vengeance, watching the stars grow closer. The ship had been built in secret, assembled from salvaged parts, in an underground factory. It was not beautiful. It was not elegant. But it was strong. And it carried weapons that the Velen had never seen. "All ships, report status," Do-won ordered. One by one, the commanders checked in. Everyone was ready. Everyone knew their role. "Begin the attack," Do-won said. The human fleet scattered across the sky like seeds thrown into the wind. Each ship had a different target, a different mission. Some were decoys, meant to draw Velen attention. Some carried soldiers for boarding operations. And one small shuttle, piloted by Han Mireille, carried the virus that could end the war. The Velen responded quickly. Their ships turned to face the human attack, weapons charging, shields glowing. They outnumbered humanity by more than 10 to 1. They were faster, stronger, more advanced in every way, but they were also confident. Too confident. They had beaten humanity once. They expected to beat humanity again. They were wrong. The first surprise came from the pulse weapons. When human ships got close to Velan vessels, they activated the electromagnetic devices that Baek Jisoo had designed. The effect was immediate. Velan crews screamed as the radiation tore through their nervous systems. Ships lost control, spinning wildly, crashing into each other. The second surprise came from the ground. Across Earth, hidden batteries opened fire. Missiles streaked upward, targeting Velan ships in low orbit. The aliens had thought the surface was helpless. They had not expected humanity to rebuild so quickly, so secretly. The third surprise came from inside the Velan flagship itself. Mirai's shuttle was small and fast. She flew through the chaos of battle, dodging fire from both sides, her hands steady on the controls. Behind her, Jisoo monitored the Velan communications, searching for the right frequency to transmit the virus. 30 seconds to range, Jisoo said. I see the flagship, Mirai replied. The massive ship hung in space, still damaged from Taeho's sacrifice months ago but still deadly. Its weapons fired constantly, destroying human ships with every shot. Mirai thought about Taeho. About his bravery. About his sacrifice. He had given them this chance. She would not waste it. 10 seconds. Enemy fighters spotted them. Beams of light flashed past the shuttle, so close that Mirai could feel the heat. She twisted the controls, spinning through maneuvers that should have been impossible. 5 seconds. A shot hit the shuttle's wing. Alarms screamed. The ship shuddered. Now, Jisoo shouted. Mirai slammed her hand down on the transmission button. The virus leaped from their shuttle to the flagship's systems, spreading through the Velan network like fire through dry grass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flagship's lights flickered. Its weapons stopped firing. Its shields collapsed. Across the battlefield, Velan ships began to go dark. Their coordination failed. Their systems crashed. The hidden backdoors that they had built into their own technology, the same backdoors they had used to cripple humanity, now turned against them. It worked, Jisoo whispered. It worked. Mirai allowed herself 1 second of relief. Then she pulled the shuttle away and headed back toward the human fleet. The battle changed in that moment. The Velan were no longer unstoppable. Their ships drifted helplessly. Their crews panicked. And humanity smelled blood. Admiral Dowan gave the order. All ships, engage. No mercy. No retreat. Make them pay for what they did. The human fleet attacked with fury that the Velan had never faced. Ships that had been prey became predators. Soldiers who had been running became hunters. Every person who had lost family, lost friends, lost everything, now had a chance for revenge. They took it. On the flagship's bridge, Velan Prime watched its fleet die and felt an emotion it had never experienced before: fear. The creature had lived for centuries. It had participated in dozens of harvests. It had watched countless species fall before the Velan collective. Broken by betrayal, destroyed by their own kindness. It had never lost. Until now. The bridge doors exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through, their weapons blazing with the electromagnetic frequency that caused such agony. Velan guards fell, screaming, their skin flickering with colors of pain. Admiral Dowan walked through the chaos with a pistol in his hand. He found Velan Prime cowering behind its command chair, its once proud glow reduced to a weak, sickly yellow. Why? The alien asked through its translator. You were supposed to be prey. Your compassion was supposed to make you weak. How did you defeat us? Dowan looked at the creature. He thought about all the people who had died, about Taeho, about the billions who would never see this moment of victory. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then he lowered the gun. You misunderstood us, he said quietly. We show compassion because we are strong enough to afford it. We help others because we know what it is to suffer. But when that compassion is betrayed, when our kindness is used against us, we become something else entirely. He stepped closer to the alien. We become the species that clawed its way up from the mud, The species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed us. The species that looked at the stars and refused to stay on one small planet. You thought we were soft. You thought we were weak. You were wrong. Velon Prime stared at him with its dark eyes. What will you do with us? We will give you a choice, Doan said. The survivors of your fleet can leave. Take your ships and go. Find somewhere else to live. But you will carry a message with you. You will tell every species you meet what happened here. You will tell them that Earth is not prey. You will tell them that humanity remembers its enemies. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. And you will tell them that if anyone else tries what you tried, they will end up the same way. Broken. Defeated. Buried. The remaining Velen ships were allowed to leave. They limped away from Earth, their holds empty, their crews broken. They had come to harvest humanity. Instead, humanity had harvested them. 1 year later, Earth was rebuilding. The cities were still ruins, but new structures were rising from the ashes. The graveyards were still fresh, but the living were planting gardens around them. The pain was still raw, but hope was growing stronger every day. Lieutenant Kim Yuna stood on a platform before a crowd of survivors. Behind her, a massive communication array pointed at the stars. She had been chosen to deliver humanity's message to the galaxy. We are humans, she said, her voice broadcast across the planet and into the void of space. 1 year ago, we were attacked by creatures who pretended to be our friends. They came to us asking for help, and we gave it freely, because that is who we are. We believe in compassion. We believe in kindness. We believe in reaching out to others. She paused, her eyes hard. But we also believe in justice. And when our compassion was betrayed, we rose up and destroyed our enemies. Not because we are cruel, not because we wanted revenge, but because we will not allow ourselves to be victims. She looked up at the stars. To everyone who is listening, Earth welcomes friends. We will share what we have. We will help those in need. We will work together for a better future. But know this: we remember our enemies. We do not forgive betrayal, and we do not forget. Her voice grew stronger. The Velen came to us in peace, and we answered with open hands. They came to us with lies, and we answered with truth. They came to us with violence, and we answered with war, and when the war was over, we buried them. She smiled, a cold smile that held no joy. Earth remembers, Earth endures, and Earth buries its enemies. This is our promise to the galaxy. Break it at your own risk. The transmission ended. Across the universe, on thousands of worlds, alien species listened to humanity's message. Some were curious. Some were afraid. Some were thoughtful. And all of them understood that a new power had risen among the stars. A species that had been wounded but not broken. A species that had learned a terrible lesson about trust. A species that would never be prey again. Han Mireille stood beside Jisoo, watching the broadcast platform empty. They had survived. They had won. But the victory felt hollow. What happens now? Jisoo asked. Mireille looked at the sky, where new ships were being built, ships designed for war as well as peace. Now we grow stronger, she said. Now we make sure this never happens again. And now we wait. Wait for what? Mireille's eyes were hard. For the next species that thinks humanity is weak. So we can teach them the same lesson we taught the Velan. The sun set over the wounded Earth. But in the darkness, new lights were shining. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had been betrayed and fought back. They had been nearly destroyed and emerged stronger. They were no longer prey. They were the hunters now, and the galaxy would learn to remember their name.